Hello and welcome to Chapter 7. Today we're going to be talking about evaluating HRD programs. We spent the prior 3 chapters talking about needs assessment, designing a program, implementing a program, and now the final phase we're going to talk about is evaluating a program. And of the phases, this is probably the most important. However, in reading the book, you may have found it a bit technical or not too exciting, but it's a very important part of the process because if we don't evaluate it, how do we know we've made a difference? How do we know it was worth doing? And how do we know what to do in the future as far as future HRD programs? So the definition of HRD evaluation is the systematic collection of descriptive and judgmental information. Okay, so if we're talking about descriptive information, this provides us a picture of what is happening or what has happened. And judgmental information communicates some opinion or belief about what has happened. So both of these are necessary in order to conduct a good evaluation. So we're going to collect the information necessary to make effective training decisions related to selection, adoption, value, and modification of various instructional activities. So evaluation involves the systematic collection of information. Okay, we're going to do it systematically. We're going to plan for it. It's going to have a predetermined plan because we need to make sure that the information we're taking all this time collecting is going to be appropriate and useful. And once we have this, then we can go forward and make appropriate decisions about future programs. So the purpose of an evaluation, well, there are many purposes. We want to know if it accomplished the objectives that we set in the design phase. Remember when we talked about setting objectives? We want to identify the strengths and weaknesses. We want to determine whether there was a gain. We'll do a cost-benefit ratio. Want to determine who should participate in future programs, who got the most out of it, who got the least out of it. So these are things we can use in going forward and doing future programs. In addition to that, it's important for HRD to be able to substantiate that they are making a contribution to the organization. And one way of doing this is to prove that there's some difference that affects the bottom line. Okay, and it's very difficult because oftentimes HRD programs are cut when there are budget problems. So it's important that HRD make a big effort to prove that what they're doing is actually meeting the goals of the company or saving money. It's impacting the bottom line. Builds credibility overall for the HRD department and the program. The most popular model to evaluate training is Kirkpatrick's framework. Okay, and this involves 4 levels of evaluation. So the first level is reaction. We want to know, did the trainees like the program? Did they think it was valuable? So you're getting their reaction to the training. The next level is learning. Did they learn what the objectives said they should learn? Okay, remember we set the objectives in the design phase. Then we have job behavior. This is the transfer. Did they use the learning back on the job? Then we have results. Did it improve organizational effectiveness? And this is a great model, and I think it shows that HRD interventions often have multiple objectives. Okay, but what the book talks about, which is quite interesting, is that most organizations don't collect data to all 4 of these levels. Okay, although about 1/3 of organizations use Kirkpatrick's model. So there are many other frameworks and research that has been done kind of playing off the Kirkpatrick model. Okay, and this is another researcher, Brinkerhoff, and he came up with 6 stages. Said that we should set goals, what's the need of the program, design the program, implement the program, and then look at the outcomes. What did participants learn? Are participants using what they learned? Did it impact anything? Did it make a worthwhile difference to the organization? So all the various evaluation models and research that has been done incorporate Kirkpatrick's levels in one way or another. So the authors of the book kind of used that as a framework and put in some of the things that were criticisms of Kirkpatrick and came up with a 4-step process. The first being reaction. You know, this is post-training attitudes. How is it perceived? How well did they like the training? You know, how much did they learn? That sort of thing. Then we have cognitive learning. Okay, how much did they actually learn? How much learning did they demonstrate after the training? How much learning did they demonstrate back on the job? And retention can go even further. I mean, maybe we want to know 1 year out, are they still performing and using what they learned in the original training? Then we look at behavior. What behavior changed as a result of this training? How well do trainees demonstrate the newly acquired skills at the end of training? And how well do they demonstrate the skills back on the job? And then lastly, we look at results. Okay, we look at the tangible outcomes, look at return on investment, the contribution of the training as far as to society in general. Some companies are real big into social responsibility and the impact on the community. So that result as well should be taken into account if that's part of an organization's goals. Then we have the stakeholder approach. A stakeholder is a person or group with an interest in seeing that an organization succeeds, and without their effort, the organization would fail. So this researcher identified 4 different stakeholder groups. We have senior management, trainees, trainers, and the trainees' managers. And we can measure various things about these groups and how they see the training going and how it affected performance from their perspective. So then the book talks about how we go about collecting the data to do an evaluation. There are many different places we could go. We could interview people, okay, interview trainees, interview managers, that sort of thing. We could give them questionnaires. We could go out and observe them, see what they're actually doing on the job. We could have tests and simulations to measure some sort of a knowledge or proficiency. We could look at the archival performance data, existing information like reports. So when we're considering choosing which data collection method to use, we need to be concerned with 3 different things. Reliability is the consistent in the measurement. So in other words, if I measure it today and you measure it tomorrow, it's going to be the same. If it is, we say it's consistent, it's reliable. Then we have to consider validity. Does it measure what it intended to measure? Okay, and then practicality. Can it be done with existing resources? Does it make sense? So there are 3 types of data. Okay, we have individual performance data, and we can look at things like employee test scores, number of units employees produce, quality, attendance, attitudes, things like that to do with the individual. We can look at the system-wide performance. These are concerns with the business unit, the team, the division. Okay, we look at things like productivity, rework, customer satisfaction. Are we doing things in a timely manner? And then lastly, we have economic data. This includes financial and economic performance of the organization or unit. So we look at the bottom line, we look at profits, avoidance of penalties, even market share of a company. So considering research design, how do we go about designing the way we're going to collect the data information and analyze it? So we have to have a plan for this, and it's extremely complex. Okay, we could have, 3 or 4 courses just in how to do research design. And if you go on in your studies, you'll take these courses. But it's very critical to HRD evaluation, okay, because it tells us the expected results of the study, the methods collected, and how we're going to collect the data. And those are important things when we're embarking upon a study that we're going to use to support training in HRD interventions. So some specific things in HRD, we could do a pre-test, post-test with a control group. So we give them a test at the beginning, we train them, give them a test at the end. And we do that with a group that we didn't train and a group we did train, and we can measure the differences. We could use random assignment between these groups to assure there's not bias there. We could collect the data over time. Okay, the longer time you collect the data, the more valid the data should be. Okay, and then we have to consider the number of respondents. The book talks about needing at least 30 to be accurate. Some researchers say you need many more. Some say you even need 100. Kind of depends on what you're trying to do and the level of confidence that you want in that. So then the book talks about some ethical issues. When we're dealing with people, we always have to consider ethical issues such as confidentiality. Some people aren't comfortable telling us things if they think someone will find out. For instance, would you be comfortable telling somebody things about your supervisor that the supervisor may be upset hearing? Okay, so we have to consider that. We want to do what's called informed consent. We want people that are participating to understand what we're doing and to understand if there's any risk involved to what they're doing, especially where we're withholding training. And this comes into play where we have control groups, because the control group won't get the training, but the other group will, and maybe the other group picks up new skills and gets a promotion. So that's not real ethical for that first group that just didn't get the training. Here we want to avoid deception. We want to be pretty above board in what we're doing and avoid pressure to produce positive results. Sometimes the results aren't positive, and that's important to find out too, because if not, we can go in and ask why and then fix whatever the problem is. Okay, in organizations, we like to do things in monetary terms. We like to know what the impact is on the bottom line. So we can do a cost-benefit analysis where we're comparing the cost of training to what we got out of the training as far as improvements in attitude, safety, and health. Cost-effectiveness analysis is the financial benefits. This is an increase in quality and profit, a reduction in waste or processing time. So this is the formula for return on investment. So what we do is we add up all the costs. These are direct costs, indirect costs, development costs, overhead costs, and compensation for participants. We add all that up, okay, and then we take the results and we divide it by the training costs. Okay, so if the number is less than 1, that means that the training costs more than the benefits accrued. So that's not really a very good thing. If the ROI is greater than 1, it means there was some benefit. In other words, we got more out of it dollar-wise than we put into it. So the greater the ratio, the better the benefit. We could also do a utility analysis. And this is where we translate training results into dollar terms. So we compute a minimum annual benefit needed to break even. We're going to use break-even analysis that yields the minimum benefit before we start, it starts being a positive return. And this probably isn't something that most HRD people do, but it's an interesting thing just to know about. So the goals of conducting a cost-benefit analysis is to put HRD on equal footing as other managers. I think HRD can be an area where sometimes it's questionable are what they're doing, is that really contributing to the bottom line? Are we seeing some impact? So it helps do that. And then the language of business is money. So if we can convert what we're doing to money, it gives much more credibility. And we want to quantify things. And if we can express things statistically, here again you have more reliability and validity and credibility. Okay, because we need to demonstrate the gains of the program. Okay. So in summary, this stuff isn't done in a vacuum. Okay, we have to consider the entire organization, when we're doing HRD interventions and evaluations. HRD impacts financial performance, turnover, absenteeism, etc. So it affects the entire organization and everyone in the organization. So these interventions really do matter. However, we need to keep in mind that training alone never works. Okay, we need to go beyond just training somebody. We need to make sure there's a transfer of training. We need to make sure it contributes to the company's bottom line. Okay, so you still have to consider all that, and that's why evaluation becomes so important for us at that point. Okay, that's the end of Chapter 7. I hope you didn't find it too technical and kind of hard to read and understand. But I think when we break it apart, it makes more sense, and it's very important. Thank you.